Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Glad to be back. Thank you, Jim.
Do we have a special offer for our listeners?
Sure. We're going to do the half off for any of our newsletters, and the promo code, if you go to VRTrader.com, is 2021 half off. So 2021 HALFOFF, and any individual subscription or time frame, if you enter that promo code, you get that discount, 2021 half off at VRTrader.com.
Mark, how are our activists, traders, our civilians in the stock market doing right now, the so-called APES?
Well, they're still on the news, and I saw a couple interviews where TV, and so I think I saw one on Facebook, and I think there was one even on CNBC where somebody's sitting there and they pull out a banana and they start eating the banana during the interview, that pretty much, characterizing themselves as the defender of the small investor, and I think that's what this is all about. We don't get a lot of publicity about it. See, Wall Street is funded by, or TV and financial news too, funded by the pharmaceutical industry and brokerage firms, and they're not really looking to support the small investor. And I think the whole movement is against the hedge funds and those that unfortunately use a lot of power and influence to take companies down, sometimes driving them out of business by shortening the stock. People lose their jobs, so forth, and sometimes not, with no real basis other than the fact executives at the hedge funds decide that they want to take this company out and drive it to zero. So we're trying to teach them a lesson, I guess, in this whole process. And I'm supportive of it. I follow a lot of the stocks that are part of this movement, and how they came up with the idea that characterization of themselves as apes is really interesting. But there's photos of some people dressed up as apes outside of Citadel headquarters in Chicago. I think we mentioned this last week. Citadel, the big hedge fund, and it's anti Wall Street, so to speak, but it's still pro making money, and there's been some small investors who've done well on some of these short squeezes, the most notable of which, I suppose, was the big run in GME, GameStop, in recent months, and AMC, the theater chain. There's a whole list of names here of companies that have high short positions that the apes are looking to create some type of buying panic at some point and teach these hedge funds a lesson, so to speak. So I've been in the business forever. I think this is really fun. It's a great opportunity both to make money and I don't know if these hedge funds are really are doing the right thing. Of course, you can make any investment decision you want, long and short. No one can stop them from doing it. But there's a point that's being made here too about maybe it's not the fairest thing in the world to be doing what they're doing, and there are a lot of rules that are bent, so to speak, in the process, where they get away with a lot of stuff that if you and I as individuals try to accomplish, we find it very difficult. So anyway, long and short, interesting, still going on. There's the most popular one now out there, the big one, is still AMC, the theater chain, and their website just tracking what the apes are doing or hope to do, or where they think the AMC stock is ultimately going. So we'll find out if they're right and they drive the shorts out and thing goes to the moon, or whether There's also the story of what damage there would be financially to the system. When we've had the long-term capital hedge fund collapse back in the 1990s, and the Federal Reserve came in and bailed them out because they thought it would be, a disaster for the financial system that they couldn't allow this fund to go down. So, the thought is a lot of these companies that have short positions are really great, and if the stocks really got driven to high levels and a lot of hedge funds got blown out, is this going to be good for the financial system? And will the Federal Reserve come in as it did back in the 90s and do the same thing? Alan Greenspan, I think, was in charge back then, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe I'm wrong, that they bailed out the funds. So that's the other aspect of this thing, keeping it under control. Is a bailout going to come, assuming there's a big short squeeze and funds go under? A lot of very interesting stuff. As a market trader, technician, series of events, and a very interesting story to track, and possibly one could profit from if you're, long a stock that there's a heavy short position and suddenly there's a panic to the upside. There was a very notable event you probably recall. It's got to be about 3 years ago or so. A Canadian company, cannabis company, Tilray, was apparently there was a huge short position in that, and stock literally, I think it was a $20.30 stock that went to $300 a share in a matter of minutes on a tremendous short squeeze, and it was like the biggest story at the time. And if you're in it, you made a killing, and it happened really fast. And those that were short, panicked, and there was a very small supply of stock available, and the prices went nuts. So, as a trader and again, market observer, these are events that you lucky enough to be involved with. And the whole idea is that the small investor benefits. The apes represent the small guy who can make big money.
Do the hedge funds resent the fact that a citizen trader can get in on the game and manipulate the market a bit?
Well, we don't know if they're going to be successful. Yeah, that's the thing. They're trying. The small guys, they say we're holding huge, long positions. Holding our positions. We're not covering. We're not doing anything new. We're hoping that the hedge funds have to cover. And the question is, do they have enough staying power? And will the will the stock really do what they hope it will do? And there's a lot of ifs here. It's going to be interesting how it all plays out. So I guess the big one to watch is AMC to see if they're going to be successful for another big short run, or whether the powers that be somehow squash them and the stock, collapses. But, some of these cases like GME or AMC, these companies could be in the process of a turnaround. I know AMC is raising capital using the high share price to, fund expansion of their company. And from what I read, GME, there's a turnaround there where the new management has come in, and it's not a zero situation the way the bears are saying it should be. So, it's fascinating how this is all going to play out. But there's a trading opportunity for those who, like myself, we sometimes jump into these things and put the names out in our newsletter as something to watch. It's an educational process here. You don't tell people to invest in this stuff or trade in it, but you put the names out there, and it certainly opens up some opportunity. So I hope I'm hoping that we get some more action here, because it's both fun and it's also an opportunity to profit.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration, with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, is the U.S. dollar about to go on a new run?
That's a good question. in the current situation in the dollar is, as you know, it came down, and we talked about this for months on these interviews about how it was so oversold, and it needed to rally. Finally started to rally a little bit, and that's not good for the gold bugs or for the commodity market, because obviously we got so many people that are involved in I guess just commodity bulls or gold bulls, and they're just interested in, and they've been correct with that market being strong. I think fundamentally, if you have a fundamental story, with printing of money and the craziness of government, there's every reason to believe the dollar should be weak, and will probably continue to be so, which should be good for commodities and for gold. Just at short term, we had this correction in the gold market and commodity market, which got way overdone. Gold's been a big disappointment to those who've been looking for tremendous moves to the upside. So I think you have to be a bear longer term, but as a trader, you get these contra trend moves, and at the moment the dollar is in a little bit of a rally phase, and that's putting the commodity market. The one exception, though, is crude oil, which decided it was going to do its own thing, and crude oil, was way overbought technically. That doesn't mean fundamentally it can go a lot higher, and I do feel it will go a lot higher over time, particularly all the restrictions and anti-crude oil sentiment out there, with the stupidity of not realizing that we need crude oil for a lot of products and stuff. We talked about this as well with regard to the green movement and so forth, that they don't realize that crude oil is an essential component, even if you're a supporter of the green movement. But interestingly, crude oil sort of violated the inverse relationship between the dollar and commodities, and continued to go up, even though we had the recovery in the dollar. So I'm looking at my chart. It looked to me like a big top in the dollar. It's not necessarily over yet, but on a short-term basis, you might see more of a rally, which could put pressure on the commodity market, which did get overdone here. I mean, it had a big run in recent months, as you know.
California wants people to drive electric cars, yet because of the heat wave there, they're telling people don't charge your electric car because the grid can't take it. Southern BC is about to be hit by a record-setting heat wave with temperatures nearly 40 degrees Celsius in the high 90s or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, we're being told turn off or turn down the air conditioning. How are we supposed to have electric cars if the grid can't even handle what we have now, let alone millions of cars?
Well, this is the long-term problem. You need electricity to charge your EV, and where's the power going to come from? And if we shut down the Keystone pipeline, and we don't allow, we're anti-energy production. The U.S. was energy independent. Suddenly when new administration comes in and got this crude oil energy perspective. So how do you get around it? The answer is probably nuclear. Uranium has been recovering in recent months. Some nuclear stocks have been acting better. So I think one long-term solution, and it's funny, the green movement was for decades anti-nuclear, and the realization may be coming that, if you want electric vehicles, you got to get the power from somewhere. So nuclear may be an answer. The problem is it takes a decade or more to get a plant underway. Other nations around the earth, especially China, have been aggressive in building these plants, where here in North America that really has not been the case. So there's going to be a big catch-up here. That's probably one of the reasons why crude oil is rallying. And despite the sentiment against it, there's got to be energy from someplace, and they're not going to get it nuclear so fast. Solar power is not going to supply it now, and wind power is not going to do it. And as we mentioned, even if you want to build all these plants, solar, wind power, even nuclear, you need crude oil, because a lot of the components that you need to create those plants and those facilities are oil-based, have oil-based components in them. So it's really round robin situation here, how it's all going to be resolved. The bottom line is there's going to be money to made if you could position yourself how you could benefit from the shortage of energy, which is...
Well, also, the same people who are against oil and gas are also against mining, where you need to get the materials if you're going to have a green, so-called green society with windmills and solar power.
Yeah, when I mentioned the anti-crude oil, I meant to also mention correctly, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I mean, you need the materials, the mining, you need all the resources. It's basically an anti-resource play because they don't like the mining and the so-called, anti-green aspect of that. But, you need the materials. It's really short-sighted. There are ways of obtaining these things that are, clean. There are such things out there that's clean energy, ways of extracting stuff. So eventually they'll come around. When the lights go off and they can't turn on the toaster, or it's in the middle of winter, it's freezing and there's no energy, suddenly the realization comes, hey, we need to do some things differently here. So, of course, the heat wave that the country's experiencing now, whether that's going to affect the grid and shut down power plants and so forth, time will tell. But we definitely need more independent energy, and nuclear is probably the big answer, particularly for the EV. Because again, around the world, it's not an issue. Here in North America, it is. Everything is so political, it's crazy. It's not objective, and that's the problem. But the markets will ultimately dictate it, Jim, as we know. The power of the dollar, where the money flows, will dictate it. And at the moment, that appears to be resolved by the movement into alternate energy sources, including nuclear.
What's going on with Bitcoin?
Really fun. Had a nice shake. Big correction. We've seen this before. There's 7,000 cryptos out there, and you wonder which ones are going to survive. All you hear in the press is anti-crypto comments, and why even think about owning one or getting involved, because the government's going to shut it down anyway. And this is it's the old expression, climbing the wall of worry. In other words, it makes me even more bullish on the future for cryptos. Now, Bitcoin in particular has a high, quote-unquote, mining cost, and this is not mining like for gold and silver. It's, as you know, based on computer mining, and apparently, tens of millions of dollars of computer equipment using high amounts of energy. Was a story that all the energy it takes to run the government of Argentina is needed to mine for Bitcoin. So it's a unique product. Other cryptos don't have this problem that Bitcoin has with this mining issue, that you have to have tremendous computer power, banks of computers to do it. And recently, there was a comment the last few days about China trying to shut down the mining operations there. And what I've read is many of the quote-unquote miners that run these high-energy Bitcoin mining operations are just leaving China and going to other places in the world where they can mine for that coin. So that story, among others, drove the price down, from $60,000 a coin, back down into the 30s, and everybody's saying it's going to go to zero. Of course, we heard that story when it was, 20, 30,000 a few years ago, and it went to 3,000 just the last couple of years, and goes from 3,000 up to 60. So I don't know if Bitcoin is gone or not. I mean, I'd rather be more bullish because of all the negative sentiment, and we have to realize it's a trading vehicle too for those who track it. There are some who are predicting Bitcoin could be $500,000 or $1 million for a coin, versus the record high of 60,000 we saw. Whether that's going to happen or not, but anything is possible. I mean, it's like the short squeeze in GME or AMC we had talked about, or Tilray, where these things go absolutely nuts, and suddenly overnight they explode in price. So it's a combination of the negative stories, the demand for it. The smart people that I'm around have mixed opinions, but I get a sense that when it's down, you should be a buyer. When it's up, you should be a seller, and you should be trading the darn thing. But the future of crypto is away from Bitcoin and XRP and the Dogecoin, lovingly known as the doggy coin, that Elon Musk is behind and Mark Cuban is behind, and those particular names just ring a bell. In particular, these things could be real survivors because they have big names supporting them. There are governments that are supporting Bitcoin, and in fact they're accepting its usage. There are individual companies that accept other cryptos like the Dogecoin and the XRP coin that's going to give them life and value over time. And there's also the overwhelming viewpoint on the part of the individual who's looking for a way to protect their money outside of the system, who don't trust government or the currencies that are out there, and find crypto. That's why crypto even started. The Bitcoin even started an alternate method of exchange away from quote unquote the system, which may collapse at some point, particularly when you see the printing of money and what's going on with the U.S. dollar. And the history of currencies over the decades or the centuries is that most currencies go to zero. I mean, the British pound is still there, but it's way down from where it used to be. U.S. dollar is way down in value from where it used to be. Primarily because of the Federal Reserve. I think the U.S. dollar has lost like 95% of its value in the last 100 years. So people see their buying power, deteriorating, so they move toward hard assets or crypto. So I think the future is overall bright. I think a lot of the jawboning, I guess is the word to use, on the part of government and those that, hey, these things are speculative, they're not going to exist, they're not going to be here anymore, is a bunch of nonsense. There will be a few that, will survive over others, I'm sure. I don't expect to have 7,000 still out there or more being viable every day, but it's among the young people and those who are progressive. Even governments themselves are talking about creating their own digital coin. I think Israel recently just created their own digital coin, and unfortunately the governments get involved for nefarious reasons. They want to track what people are doing, and they don't like cash. So if they could get everybody, tied to a digital, coin, I guess is the best term, or currency, they could track everything you're doing, and it's all electronic. So there's, like, say, nefarious reasons for governments to get involved. But I know the individual likes them because it supposedly gives them freedom and independence away from government. So with that in mind, I think the future's bright. You got to trade them. They're very volatile. And it's something you may just wish to hold as a long-term alternate investment, as you would hold gold or real estate or stocks or anything else. So, interesting market. We do track it, and you just got to realize that these things are extremely volatile, and they're not like owning a CD at the bank, or savings deposit at the bank. These are volatile instruments, but at some point, you may have them, and you may not want them. Let's say, U.S. government, the Canadian government decide that everything that you have in your checking or savings account is now digitized, and it's converted to some new coin that they create because they want to control or monitor everybody. You may be forced into a coin that you don't even know exists now or even want, and it'll be interesting how this all plays out.
What's going on in the geocosmic front?
A lot of interesting stuff. Of course, we had the solar eclipse, as we talked in the last, week or two. We just had the full moon, yesterday, last night, today. Why do we talk about stuff like this? Well, on these interviews we've covered this so many times, people will just think, I'm off my rocker on a certain level, but this, I told the story before, I might as well tell it now since we don't have a time limit per se, but I remember back in the 1970s, I was watching, the Wall Street Week television program with Louis Rukeyser, which was, the preeminent financial program on national television in the United States. I assume in Canada watched it as well. And they had Ian McAvity as a guest on the show, and I believe he's based in Toronto. He had a newsletter called Deliberations. I became an acquaintance of his many, many years later at conferences and so forth. But on that particular show, he made a presentation about how you could trade gold tied to the full moon. And he had the theory that you'll see highs, I suppose, in gold when there's a full moon. So they didn't have it back on the show again, and maybe they just thought this was too wild, but it sparked my interest. So since the 1970s, when he had that interview, I've been tracking the moon as a indicator, for movement in commodity and the stock markets. And I can't tell you how many instances, including, by the way, the APE stocks that we talked about earlier. I just somebody made a comment that was on Twitter about how AMC made a high right around the full moon, and I almost fell out of my chair because I track the full moon and the quarter cycles and the new moon and so forth just as a charting event. I just put them on my charts, and many times you will see highs and lows tied to the lows and highs of the market. So I happened to put up AMC, and there was a coincidence, but I also noticed that it was on a quarter moon, I think it was the third quarter, that AMC actually posted the record high of 72 not too many weeks ago. It wasn't on the full moon or the new moon. It was one on the quarter cycle, so there was actually a correlation when I pulled up the charts. So, this stuff is not nonsense. I mean, whether it's, you could say it's coincidence, but I've seen too many events where you see highs or lows in the market tied to the lunar cycle. It doesn't have to be the full moon; it could be the new moon. And there are planetary forces out there. I mean, we just think, we're sitting here on the Earth, and it's just when we look around, there's nothing affecting us. The movement of their friends of mine who are financial astrologers, many very famous, who've been on national television, not as often now as I've seen in years past. We know how many leaders, how many countries, world leaders, presidents, kings, and queens had closet astrologers, advising them. So whether it's the moon or whether it's the movement of the planets, there are forces out there, and I make an effort to try to track this stuff. So, if you're overbought in the market, you hit a lunar cycle. Many times you will see a trade in the market, and sometimes a very significant one. So, I'm not an astrologer, but I know those that follow and track these things, and many are acquaintances of mine, and they send me their research, and it's just fun to see, if you get these correlations, besides, the official word is, it's, what the Federal Reserve said today, or what company report came out today, that affected the market, but they didn't look to the heavens, that maybe there's something else up there that's affecting human emotions. We know our bodies are mostly made out of water. That the moon controls the tides on Earth. You don't think there's some effect on us and the way we act, and whether that same power extends out to the planets, not only the moon itself. I'm not here to question that. All I can tell you is I've seen correlations, and we like to pay attention to that. As far as other interesting things, Jim, I know I'm taking up a lot of the time on the interview. Is we have later this month. Getting toward the end of the month now, it should be at any moment. The Pentagon is expected to deliver to the U.S. Congress from a task force that was established last year that collected information about the they called unexplained aerial phenomena. You and I mostly refer to this as the unidentified flying objects, UFOs. For these unidentified flying objects that the pilots have been reporting. There's those famous videos that were released in the last year or two that we've seen on television. So there's supposed to be some task force report. Now, whether that's going to come out with anything significant or not, we know there's been a cover-up for decades with regard to this subject. And unfortunately, fortunately, there's been accounts of this for hundreds or even thousands of years. So there's been a lot of, press since the Roswell event in 1947. But it'll be interesting what that report, if any, states coming the end of the month. My thinking is, and I've stated this for a long time, is there's no question these things exist. Some claim that a lot of our advanced technology has come from the reverse engineering of alien craft that has crashed on the Earth, and many of these stories go all the way back to the Nazis that supposedly has similar experience. But even if you dismiss all that, I tell you with great certainty, and doing all the research and reading that I've done and interviews with people over the decades, there are advanced craft that are flying around, and whether you believe they're from another planet or whether it's reverse engineered craft that was created from those encounters, or whether we just have created a technology that the powers that be won't really want to talk about. They're out there. And, there were presentations, planetary scientist, his name escapes me, who made a presentation back in the 1980s at the United Nations showing pictures of these craft that were leaving the Earth and, moving at speeds that were just unbelievably, out of sync with anything that our technology even had at that time. Of course, this is decades ago. So this stuff out there, the question, what are they? Are they extraterrestrial? Are they our own creations? Are they re-engineers from extraterrestrial or not? And I don't know whether we're going to get the information or not. The military has kept this secret. And the question is, why is there attention now to the subject? Why would they make a report to Congress now? Why were these pictures released by the military? There's something going on. And do they want more funding for their secret operations? Do they want to scare us a little bit? Do they want to continue to cover it up? I just had this gut feeling, and I'm probably, people think I'm nuts, for bringing it up. But I think, an event is coming, whether it's an alien event or the military is going to stage an event, to sort of get us in line with what's really going on out there. And, you could say the military could stage an event, shake everybody up, and maybe it's really, our own craft, not an alien craft per se. Maybe they're looking for more funding for the operations. And one of the things I put in my newsletter, and I'll just close with this, I put it in my newsletter, I think it was, this morning it's a newsletter, and I've done this over the years. I've done it at conferences too. I put a picture up of the insignia for the newly created, United States Space Agency, the space program, and you see the insignia up there. And right next to it, I put a picture of the insignia that was used by Star Trek in the Star Trek series for the Federation, the World Federation of Planets. And if you get to look at my newsletter this morning, you'll see a picture of the space agency, the U.S. Space Agency that just was created, and the insignia, and as compared to the one from the Star Trek series, and they are identical. And when you see this, it's really scary. Why is the Federation insignia that William Shatner had on his lapel during the Star Trek series? Why is that the same as the space agency that now that Donald Trump has created? So just the shape of it, the stars, the way it's all laid out, it's sort of scary. There's something that has been kept from the public on a major level for decades, and I get all kinds of stories here, and then the listeners are more interested in a financial broadcast here than one regarding the subject. But you think about it, if any or part of this is true, it's the greatest story of our lifetime. Beyond any financial story, it's like Columbus discovering America. Of course we know that he really didn't discover it. The Vikings were there before, and on and on and on. But, the point is, a major event story, beyond anything is out there, and my feeling has been covered up. So we'll find out what the military reports to Congress, if it's a farce or if it's something more significant. But my gut feeling is something big is coming, and, hopefully, we get the truth.
Yeah, I can imagine it's going to be a 300-page report, and it's all blacked out, and the last word is yikes. It's the only part you get to see. Mark, I'm looking forward to chatting with you next week.
Thanks so much for giving me some airtime. Have a great week. Thanks again.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as vrtrader.com. If you have any questions for Mark or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.